Well, thanks for coming on today, buddy. We really appreciate it and been wanting to catch up with you for a long time now. You're a busy guy. You have lots of irons in the fire. So I'm really excited to chat about all that, buddy, today and let people kind of hear your story and what you're doing now. And we've been training together now for a good while. Um, Seems like just yesterday when we started, but it's been a couple of years now. And so really excited to chat about your experiences so far with us um, and all that, bro. So thanks again.
Oh, stoked, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, bro. Absolutely. So I would say that most people probably know your story if they are listening to this podcast, but we also have a good amount of listeners that were not around rodeo their whole life, so might not know who you are, what you do, and your story a little bit. Would you mind just kind of filling everybody in on you?
Yep, quick version of the story. Grew up in Wyoming, met my wife, got married, moved to Montana. I live at an hour and a half north of Billings. Since I was a little kid, all I ever wanted to do was rodeo, train horses, and do leather work and cowboy, run my own cows. And that's what I did. I did the high school rodeo, college rodeo. As soon as I turned 18, bought my card, went pro rodeoing, and I guess that led into a 9 or 10 year professional career. I was very fortunate to have some successes. Made the NFR 6 times at the 2018 season, September 2018 season. I was on the bubble. Was hitting the last few weeks of rodeos there. I was 14th. Went down to Amarillo, Texarkana, and Pasadena. Pasadena was the last one of the weekend. Had a horse flip over on me there out in the arena. Smashed me, broke my back. Chance fractured T10, so it broke horizontally all the way through partially through T9, all the way through T10. Shifted the spine, leaving me with mobility issues from the waist down. So no feeling or movement from the waist down, belly button down. It's crazy that you're talking about how long we've been training, because it seems like yesterday that happened, and we're
Mm-hmm.
over 5 years now. But
Mm-hmm.
so since 2018, I've had a kid that's now 4, and um, chipping away, trying to not let life setbacks keep me from chasing my dreams, desires, and passions, and ultimately chipping away at getting out of this wheelchair.
Damn right. Damn right. That is
There's the short version.
I love
You
it.
want me to go
That
more
was
detail? Or?
you are no, you got it to the point, man. That was awesome. You've got it nailed down, and that's it does seem like yesterday, man. I remember when that happened, and coming back out of that when you called to start training again, and it just it just fired me up, man. That call in general when I saw it come through, and I was like, I knew what you were wanting to do, and you wanted to get back to it, and you've always been that guy that has always been going into things head on. Me and Logan met you. We've known each other for over 10 years now. We were going to Clint Cannon School together back in the day, and I remember meeting you and seeing you, and man, like you were the first guy I saw that was my same age that made me realize I was capable of doing great things in the arena if I wanted to. And so for that, I thank you for that. Been a huge role model for me in that aspect. But how during that time you found a new passion, and that's riding. Right, I mean you've always rode horses, but in the competition sense of things, you are now getting into that reining cow horse cutting world, which is in the same sense it's similar to rodeo, but it's also very very different. Was that something you're always interested in, or is that something that came to be after your injury?
So I grew up. I I grew up a horseman. I my uncle Duncan lives in Bridger, so he lives just 40 minutes south of us. He was who I didn't grow up knowing my dad and or my real biological father. The dad that raised me wasn't my biological father, and my uncle was my hero. He wasn't my father figure. He still taught me all the bad things that an uncle should teach its nephew, but he was my role model. He was my hero, and clear down to the detail of he shot himself when he was young. Had a bullet go up the bottom of his chin and it came out his eye. So his face is all disfigured. Like you wouldn't know it, but his face is all disfigured. And anyways, long story short, he had a feeding tube in his belly button for a while and it left scar tissue. So he wears his pants undone because so the button doesn't rub. And growing up, I would wear my pants undone because I wanted to be just like my uncle. And so he was the cowboy. He's where I seen cowboy in my family. He rodeoed, rode bulls and broncs and barebacks and trained horses and drove wagons and did all the cool cowboy stuff. And that was who I wanted to be like. I emulated my life around that guy. And so when I was 12 years old, I would start going to his house in the summers and learning how to train colts and train horses and do leather work and build saddles. And really, he taught me a lot of life lessons just working with him. And so I developed a passion to train horses at a young age. It was even while I was rodeoing, I either had my own colts or I would take in some outside colts on the off seasons and train horses. I have a passion for horses. And in 2014, I was traveling with R.C. Landingham at the time and Caleb, but Caleb was hurt. And so the inaugural American was going on. And so we got checked into the American, and the world's greatest horseman was going on at the Coliseum down at the stockyard. So Ty, being a small-time cow horse trainer, he said, let's go watch some of that. So we went and watched some of it, and I was just dating Shelby at the time, and she called and asked how it was going, and I said, this is some of the coolest stuff I'd seen between human and horse. When I get done rodeoing, this is the world that I want to get into. And at the time, I didn't really care about showing. It was from a statement that my uncle had always taught me. We used old vaquero style of natural horsemanship and trying to figure out how to make bridle horses. And I just think there's something special about fancy spade bits hanging in horses' mouths, doing high-end training. And so seeing the reined cow horse in competition, it was always my dream to get around those guys because my uncle always told me, he said, this horse training gig, he said, my ceiling will be your floor and you'll go on to teach me something someday. And so that was always my dream, was to come home someday and be able to teach my uncle a tip. And so really the dream was to get around as many of those high-end horse trainers as I could and learn as much as I could. And as the years went on and as I watched some of it and kind of kept up with some of that world, I said, well, shoot, maybe when I am done rodeoing, maybe competing at the world's greatest horseman someday will be the next gig for me. So it's had been a dream for a while, 10 years now. And I hadn't shared that dream with very many people because after the wreck, that was I still rode. I still was branding and cowboying and riding, but it was different. It wasn't training. It wasn't working on that connection with the horse. It was just riding around like a bump on a log. And so it wasn't that I'd given up on the dream, but I was waiting to be walking again for me to think that that was a reality or a possibility. And in 2020, I did a podcast with Marcus and Morgan Luttrell, Team Never Quit podcast. And at the end of the podcast, they asked me what I'd be doing if the wreck hadn't happened. And so this would have been just shy of 3 years of post-wreck, I guess. And I told them, I said, I'm doing exactly what I'd be doing regardless of the wreck. I figured out how to keep ranching. I got a new gig trading cattle, buying and selling calves for guys. I got my leather gig going, so kind of got a business in the leather shop, still running sheep, still doing all the things I'd be doing regardless of the wreck, other than I always had a dream of getting in the rein cow horse world when I was done rodeoing. So when I get walking again, that's what I'm going to do. Well, 2 years later, past that, Aaron Brookshire heard that, and it came at a time where, so this would have been 2022, I guess, March of 2022. it came at a time where I hadn't given up. I hadn't given up on my dream of walking. I hadn't given up on my dream of training. I hadn't given up on some of these things, but I was awful frustrated. My 3-year-old colts were standing out in the yard, and we were trying to decide who we were going to send them to, and it was pissing me off. It was frustrating me. I wanted it to be me.
Mm-hmm.
And I went out in the leather shop and I said a little prayer. And my prayer was, Lord, you have got to change my desires and passions, because this is the only thing that is keeping me frustrated. It's the only thing that's keeping me pissed off. And I want to be doing this. I want to be training. And I'm okay. I've surrendered to your timing on walking again. I've surrendered to a lot of these things. I'm okay with everything looking the way it looks for the time being, except for the horse riding side of my life being different. I said, that's got to change. You either got to change my desires or you got to give me away. And 2 weeks to the day after that little prayer session, Aaron Brookshire called me. And I didn't know him. He didn't know me. He had heard that podcast, and he tracked my phone number down through some mutual rodeo friends. Ty Wallace, actually, he knew Ty, so he called Ty, and Ty tracked my number down and gave it to him. And he called me out of the blue, and he said, I listened to that podcast. Is that still your dream? I said, yeah, well, I think so. He said, well, 90% of my non-pros don't know how to use their legs anyways, so if you're willing, he said, I think we can figure it out. And that was March of 2022. And so I had some horses at home that I was pretty prideful about, that I wanted to make work. Long story short, they weren't melting to the program. I got fired off one, got bucked off. We had a family meeting. They told me, it was actually family intervention. They told me, if you're going to be serious about this deal, why don't you go get a good one? And of all the people around this place, how come you're the only one still riding a bronc? So I called him, said, what do you think about me selling this horse and coming and getting a prospect that's a little farther along? He said, I think it's a great idea. I've been waiting for this phone call. Said there might be a few in my barn that would work. So that June of 2022, I made my first trip down to his place. He lives right outside of Weatherford. Rode around with him, snowballed into last winter. We came and wintered down here, spent 3 months in Texas, right there by his place. Got a horse bought, got to my first horse show last spring, and got qualified at the World Show. Came and competed at Fort Worth at the Celebration of Champions, which goes in conjunction with the World's Greatest Horseman. To this year, we wintered down here this winter, and chipping away at trying to figure out how to actually win instead of just compete. So that's where we're at.
What's it feel like to be competing again? Does that feel good?
It's everything rodeo. It's everything that I've had that since I got hurt, that rodeo was to me. It's I didn't realize it. I told my uncle, I had come down here a few times, and I told him, I said, no, he said, I'm not. He said, I'm just stoked to be learning. Finally, my dream's coming true of getting to ride around with all these guys and learn the finer tips of horse training and higher end horse training and stuff. And I said, I don't really care about showing, but I can't wait to come home and teach you something. And he said, oh no, he said, you were made in the arena, and you're made for the arena. He said, you'll start showing again. And it wasn't until I made a couple trips down here, and it was actually in August of that year, 2022, August, I was working a cow, and some things were starting to click. And I'd actually fell off the time before this. Every time I'd worked a cow, I got to tell that story, but every time I'd worked a cow prior to this, it was one that Aaron had worked. So it was they'd be pretty numb or pretty wore out, and I'd go in there and work it. And well, I was starting to get cocky because it was starting to click. I was like, I think I'm ready for the next step. So one day I ride with a seatbelt that we designed, that it has my uncle built it actually. It has a flank strap release on it. So if I get in a jam, I just pull the flank strap deal and it comes loose. Well, he had fabbed some hooks that hooked into my saddle at home. Well, when I came down here, I was using Aaron's saddle, and it was a little loose, but we didn't think much of it. And so I, being pretty cocky, I said, I think I can handle one of them fresh ones. So I went and picked out a fresh deer, and I was like Whiplash the monkey dog up there. This horse is cutting this cow, and I'm just trying to stay in the middle. And I get a little to the high side one time, and cow ducks back to the left, and I was still going right, and the deal come off the D-ring of the saddle, the seatbelt popped off, and so I pitched and bailed and landed on the ground, and everybody eyes got big and freaked out, and come over and said, "You all right?" I said, "Hell yeah, I can ride." I said, "I was riding when I fell off." Um, And actually, that horse that I was on that day, instead of staying hooked onto the cow and running me over, she stopped and
Man.
like almost like she felt bad. She walked
Yeah.
over to me and stuck her head down on the ground, like, "Geez, Louise, man, I didn't mean to do that
Sorry.
to you.
Yeah.
Here, you need a hand." And that was the horse I actually ended up buying.
Oh, that's
And
so cool.
so, anyways, the next trip in August, it came down and some things started to click, and I was driving home that day, or that after that trip, we'd been down here for 10 days, Shelby and I, and I it was crazy. I just had this super fire relit inside of me, and I was like, my honest verbatim word for word thought was, if Amberly Snyder can figure out how to win money at a pro rodeo in the barrel racing, why can I not figure out how to win money at a cow horse show?
Hmm.
And it steamrolled into digging some of those old things up in JR that I had kind of let dwindle.
Hmm.
And it wasn't that I'd given up on walking, and it wasn't some of these things, but chasing the bucking horse dream, chasing gold buckle dreams, you operate at such a high level of intensity all the time.
Hmm.
And when I first got hurt, that's how I treated walking. And it was anything prior to in my life that I wanted, I got. And it came from my work ethic, whether
Hmm.
that was state championships in wrestling, whether that was state championships in rodeo, whether that was college titles in rodeo, whether that was the NFR. It came from, I lost, and then I knew I could give more, so I went and gave more, and I got more. And so I had created this habit in my life of anything I wanted, I got. And if I couldn't get it, I went and worked a little harder for it.
Hmm.
Well, 4 years of trying to walk again, of never working at anything harder in my entire life and not seeing the results that I felt like I deserved, weighed on me. And it was very, very, very hard. And I was just kind of going through the motions. I didn't quit believing, I didn't give up, but I wasn't working at it as though I believed it. And
Hmm.
I wasn't working at it as hard as I should. So the cow horse thing for me was it came at the exact right time, exactly when I needed it. I needed that something else to shoot for. And it has been everything rodeo was to me. It's given me the goals to set, chase, knock off the list, reset goals, chip away higher, shoot for the stars. It's ramped up my work ethic again as far as
Hmm.
workouts go, and having that something else to shoot for. It's the butterflies, the competition butterflies that I love, that I crave, that you suck your hat down and let's
Hmm.
go for 90. Um, and it's not, I've been trying to explain it to some other people, because you're not the first one that's asked me that. It's not quite the same as hearing that right
No.
when you crack
Yeah.
your hand around on a bareback horse,
Yeah.
but it's not far off.
Right.
There is still that line of, I'm dealing with another animal here. So I've seen some big wrecks in the cow horse arena. So there's still that life or death kind of feeling that you get, that something can go bad, but I love being comfortable in the chaos feeling. So it has been. There's that adrenaline rush. There's
Hmm.
all the things. It's been life changing, man. It's been exactly what I needed at the exact right time.
That's so cool, man.
I didn't realize I loved competing as much as
Yeah,
I do.
yeah.
Mm.
And that's something I think we all don't realize. And I had a spine injury as well, like, but obviously it was different in the sense that I was able to do things after. I'm really lucky for that. But that was the one thing I can resonate with is that feeling of not being able to compete for something. And also my buddies, like you had guys checking in on you all the time, like calling you and whatever, but it's not the same as getting to go to the rodeo and see they're your family, and I missed that camaraderie. I missed being around like-minded guys that were driving me to be better. And it's not that they weren't there when I was injured. It was just that they were still doing their own thing and I was having to do my own thing and figure out a different route. And it's tough and it's hard. So when you find something that lights that fire, I remember when you called me after you had talked to him and you were lit up, dude. You were stoked. Like, let's work out right now. Let's work out twice a day. Like, I'm ready to go, bro. And I was like, oh, Junior's back. Let's go, baby. But I felt like that about CrossFit did that for me, man. It gave me that sense of competing at something again. Gave me those butterflies of like, ooh, like here we go. You better get tough and get this done. And there's so many things in life that you can take that to, and it can be that thing for you. It just depends on how you view it. And so to hear your perspective had to change a lot, and through prayer, through perseverance, through all of these things, you've got this whole new perspective on what your life is about and what fires you up. And I think that
Oh man,
a lot of people listening could take something away from that. It's all about what you make of it, and you can make something.
Well, this is what I hope comes from this podcast is exactly that. What my life is about is inspiring and encouraging other people to not let life setbacks keep you from chasing your dreams, desires, and passions. And I don't care if that is you're stuck in a 9 to 5, and here's where this comes from. From the time we're little kids, we are not, unless you have great parents, which I was very blessed with. I was fortunate that I had a mom that always told me to go do what I wanted to do. Her only rule was if you start something, you don't quit. And we were broke, we were poor, but there was always a way to go try what I wanted to try. But in the school system, you're never taught to chase your dreams, desires, and passions. You're taught to chase money. And I think when that becomes what you strive for, when that becomes what you chase, if it's not chasing your dream, desire, and passion, it leaves you with a void. And so I don't care if you're taught to chase a good job that's got good benefits, that pays good, that buys you a house and all these things. And those are all materialistic things. And so if you're not chasing the thing that really lights your fire, then there's that void in you. And I've noticed this since my wreck. My desire was the horse. My passion is the horse. And I didn't even know what that was yet. I just knew that just riding around wasn't doing it. And when he called me, so I've always said I don't miss rodeoing, but I miss spurring bucking horses, and I miss being around my buddies on the daily. And I didn't even quite understand what that meant, but it was this sense that I was still running cows. And these were all things that I had set up while I was still rodeoing too. I was still running cows. I was still running sheep. I was still riding. I was still getting in the branding pen. I was still doing leather work. I was helping my wife raise a kid. I was doing these things, and I was finding joy in them, but there was still that something that I needed to be chasing for. And the spurring bucking horses thing, it's why rodeo guys can relate to warriors so well, veterans so well. It's that life or death, being comfortable in the chaos. I always knew the situation could happen. I always knew I could end up in a wheelchair, but you never think that. You are so comfortable that you never think that it's going to be you. And that's not a bad thing. Like, that's a good thing. We have to strive in that element.
Yeah.
You can't think that way. And the being around your buddies on the daily thing is when you are traveling in a rig with 3 other guys and you have that little flick of fear, that little flick of doubt that says, I don't know if I can spur Virgil. You have 3 other guys that say, quit being a pussy. Let's go grab a case of beer and float the river. And you never think about it again.
Yeah.
It's this constant drive of everybody pushing each other to the highest level on a daily basis. It's not just a seasonal thing. It's you have to go home and take a break from your buddy so that you can decompress for a minute, because when you're rodeoing, it is and you don't even try to. It's just what that sport does. It's just what that environment does. It's just what that mentality does is every day you're pushing each other to the highest level that you can possibly get to. And so not having that, I had to find that. And I didn't realize that there was so many people in the world that don't think like we think. And I didn't realize there was, I'm going to offend some people here, but the quote unquote duds of the world. I didn't know how to deal with the duds of the world, of people that when you say you're going to do something, you do it. When you say you want to get something, you go after it. When you say, I don't know if I can, but I'm going to try, you actually do, you know? And so the competition thing for me, I didn't realize I loved competing. Like I always said, I love spurring bucking horses. I thought it was that feeling thing that I missed, but it's the competition. It was the competition that I missed. It was that setting goals and shooting for something. It was putting in a week's worth of work and showing up on the weekend and going, man, let's see if it works. And if it does, great. And if it doesn't, we're going to figure out how to fix it. And I need that in my life. I needed that in my life. And I hadn't found where to apply that differently until the cow horse deal came along. And I thought it was walking. I thought that was walking for me, but it wasn't. Like I'm just competing against myself there. And I needed I needed somebody to beat. I needed somebody to shoot after, I needed somebody to chase, to be the hunter again. And when I came home in August, that fire that was lit, when I talked to you and I told you my dreams, desires, and passions and my goals for this deal, it relit that thing inside of me. And in 2014, I told Shelby, I said, my goal when I get around these guys, I think maybe after rodeo, my goal would be to compete at the world's greatest horseman someday. So when I got home, I was fired up, and the light bulb had went off that I'm going to take this serious. This is the rodeo to me. I understand that it's going to take 3 times as much work. I understand the situation. I understand that I'm starting at the bottom of the totem pole, but I'm wired to shoot for the impossible. And
say that's right up your
so
alley.
This is a funny story. I called my trainer and I was like, hey man, what's reality here? What's, if I buy this horse, because the horse is going to be way too much money and I don't have it. So I'm going to go work to get the money. And I'm kind of business minded. So how can she pay herself off? I mean, what are entry fees? How much do you win? Like it was the exact rodeo thing for me. It's like, this ain't no joke for me. Like the switch is flipped. Like this is happening. And I got to set realistic goals and I got to set goals. And, so I was saying that, like, if I'm going to buy a $30,000-$40,000 horse, can I win that? And he didn't tell me it was impossible, but he didn't want to fill my head full of false hopes either. He said, well, maybe let's not approach it that way. Maybe let's let it be a hobby. And the colts out of her will pay herself off. And my goal has always been to get you competitive in the arena. So I think that's a for sure thing, but kind of that type of talk. And you guys on here will know me. I got off the phone and that did not sit well with me. So I fervently sought what reality was. And I spent some time in prayer, and it's like, man, I don't want this to be rodeo to me, because rodeo is such a selfish game.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a kid now, and I don't want to be so consumed by this that I forget about the small things and the other jobs that I have that are more important to me. And I could already sense myself going that way. And I would fricking sell my place to go chase this dream type of a deal. Like that's not a hard thing for me to do. And so I was kind of worried. I was like, I don't want it to be that, but there's this thing that I got to stroke here. There's this flame that is burning. I said, I can't not chase it. And the small still voice that came to me was, what was the dream before? And the dream before was to compete at the world's greatest horseman someday. And the next small voice was, why is that not still the dream? And so I called him. I called him back. This was after 6 or 7 hours of fervently thinking about this. I called him back and I said, here's the deal, man. I said, I don't think you understand who you're dealing with. I said, I appreciate all you've done. I appreciate your phone call. It's changed my life, but I just need you to know where I stand. I'm setting goals, and my goals are for the impossible. And I understand where I'm at. I understand we're at the very bottom of the totem pole. I understand we're at the beginning. I understand that because of the situation, it's going to require 3 to 5 times as much work out of me as it would as if the situation were normal. But that is what I'm willing to do, and I have to shoot for the impossible. And the impossible is competing at the world's greatest horseman someday. And now that I know a little bit about the game, I want to be $1 million rider. And this is the rest of my life type of a deal. And I appreciate you, but as my coach, I need you to coach me with those same expectations that I have of myself, or even greater,
Mm-hmm.
or else I'll go get a new coach. Thanks for
Mm-hmm.
all you've done, but if you're not going to coach me to that level, then I'll go get a new coach. And he's a kind of an introverted, kind of quiet guy. And I could see his jaw dropped on the other side of the phone. But what he said was, man, all the vetting I did of you, nobody's ever accused you of setting your goals too low. So just like we eat an elephant, part one bite at a time. And that was all I needed to hear. It was I believe in you. If you're going to I can't make that happen for you, but I believe you. I believe you're going to work at it. And if on the days that you're struggling or have a fear, I'm going to remind you what you told me today. And that's all I needed to hear.
Mm-hmm.
And so through the course of this whole deal, that's what I needed. And I have to set the goals of the impossible, because that is me. That is what I do. I tell everybody that I'm going to walk again. I'm still 5 years. I'm 5 years post wreck, still in a wheelchair. And I still to this day tell people I'm going to walk again. And this is just the other avenue of shooting for the impossible, with the
Mm-hmm.
grand scheme and the grand picture of this whole deal is my ministry, man. And it's me hoping to show the other people that the Lord is real, that Jesus is real, that um, it doesn't matter where you're at, that he just wants a relationship with you, and that with that relationship, he can do the things that exceed our beliefs. The Ephesians 3:20, the all glory to God who is able through his mighty power at work within us to accomplish infinitely more than we can even ask or think, and to inspire and encourage others to not let life setbacks keep them from chasing their dreams, desires, and passions. Because if I can chase a dream, desire, and passion, even in this situation, so can you. So I don't want to hear your excuses anymore.
Mm-hmm. That's it, dude. That's it. I want to touch on something really quickly that I love that you said. You're talking about, your trainer, your coach for your riding, and what he said to you was, in my mind, is so monumental when it comes to coach and athlete relationship, and the sense that he believes in you so much that you're going to do what you're going to do. But he was also very realistic with you. But the last part, you know, I'm going to remind you these days when it's not going well or you're not putting in the work, this is what you told me. And this is this is the expectation. This is the standard that you need to be upholding. And you and I have had that conversation before as well. You called me, it's been a while now, but you're like, don't let me freaking, like, I need you. Like, I need you to be on my ass. And that's what part of the having a coach is the accountability. the having someone there that tells you something you don't necessarily want to hear, but it's when you need to hear it, and it gets you going again. And that's where we think about this whole thing as a system. And I'm thinking about professional rodeo athletes. I'm thinking about these young guys coming up, and they think it's all just going to happen if they just work. And yes, like you said, your story is true to that. You put in the work and you kept working, and it paid off in the arena. Made 6 NFRs in a 10-year career. It's unreal, you know. And so, but it took a system to get you there. It took accountability buddies. It took those traveling partners, those 2 guys, 3 guys in the truck with you that said, "Hey, quit being a puss and let's go forget about it for the week, like for the day, so you can go do your thing." You need that. You have to have that, and it takes all of that to be a champion. And so to have the team that you have, and to see that the team hasn't gone anywhere, dude. Like from rodeo to where you are right now, you still have a team behind you. You still rely on the team to get you where you want to go because it's that valuable to you. And I think a lot of young athletes don't see that value quite yet because they haven't experienced the things that you've experienced, or, you know, veteran athletes have experienced. So to hear you say that through all these like trials and tribulations, you still got that team, and that's the one thing that's really helping you keep driving forward is huge, I think. So I appreciate you sharing that part. That's
Well,
really, really cool.
it's what we take for granted in the
Yes.
rodeo world. That's it. That's what's at the tips of our fingertips every day. And when that, I don't care if you're just the rookie kid hot off the track, because here's the deal: when you're high school rodeo, on the majority of those people, they either have a parent, an uncle, a buddy, a friend, a peer, or somebody that was older than them that's kind of taking them under their wing and making sure they are getting involved. And once the fire's lit and you go to the next level, it's at your fingertips every day. That team is at your fingertips, and it's free. It's not something you have to go out and seek and go get. It's just there.
Mm-hmm.
And when you don't have that, or for me, when the wreck happened and every life continues to happen, it's there's this feeling like you realize that I'm a small fish in this sea, and life continues to happen. So it's the whole thing. I don't care if it's retirement. I don't care if it's phasing out and going into the next thing of life, whatever it is. It's that thing. We take that for granted. We take that team for granted. We take that coach for granted. We take those little extra things that we do in that career for granted, that when that isn't there anymore, you still have to find that. And you can attest, when I reached out to you, I was like, here's the deal. I'm going to start doing this thing, and I need this, and possibly this is what's going to get me walking again too. How many days have I missed? Plenty.
Yeah. Lots. Yeah.
And it's not because I'm not motivated.
Yeah.
I had to relearn discipline.
Mm-hmm.
And even though I'm chasing higher goals, and I called you and told you I need you to keep me accountable, there's still days that I've missed.
Mm-hmm.
And there's still days that, or even weeks that life has taken over where it's hard, and I let these excuses step in the way, but I'm dang sure better than I was 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And
lot
that's
better.
finding that discipline.
Yes.
And that's finding that freaking thing, looking yourself in the mirror and going, did you know? And I had to even implement other things. I had to change my daily schedule, and I had to get up in the morning and start doing something that was hard. And it's been push-ups and sit-ups for me. It's been every day I get up and do push-up and sit-ups. That's my non-negotiable. So that if I miss a workout, if life takes over and I miss a workout, I still feel like I did something, because it weighed on me when I would go a week and I would feel like getting in the leather shop and doing a job and making the money was more important. That was just an excuse to not carve out an hour and a half of my time to go frickin' do what I knew was right and do what I knew what was good for me and better for me. And I need that team. I need that guy. I need that coach. I need Doug Champion in my life. When I miss a workout or two, he goes, hey, bro, quit being freaking a punk and get your 4 in this week. And I've tested it, and I've tried it, and I've failed, and I've started over, and I've done it. And I don't beat myself up when I fail. I'd let that failure go, okay, that sucked. I'm going to get better.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes coaches and it takes accountability partners and it takes those guys in your rig saying, freaking let's go, bro, quit. You're freaking being a punk. You're partying way too much. Look at where your career's going. You went from third in the world to 2 years later, freaking 14th in the world and didn't win a single dollar at the finals. Do you think that's because of the way you're living? Mm-hmm. And it takes those guys. And I had those guys when I was rodeoing. Mm-hmm. And I needed those guys in my next endeavor also.
Yep. Man,
so I guess with that being said, don't be scared to get that.
Yeah.
Like, I think oftentimes we have a fear of needing a coach. And here's the deal. Like, the coach is a coach for a reason. I don't care if it's a business coach, if it's a workout coach, if it's a trainer, if it's a horse trainer. I don't care what kind of coach it is. They're a coach for a reason. And why would you not use their knowledge and their past experiences to go chip away at your armor, you know? Yep. So I guess encouragement for those that listen to this that don't have a coach that feel like they need or want a coach, go get it because it's the best thing you'll do. It's money well invested. I don't care what avenue it is, go get a coach.
Yep. And it's another important thing I thought you said right there is like, it doesn't matter what you're in, whether it's athletics, business, freaking life, coaches are imperative to being successful. I have a coach when I'm feeling like down about working out, don't want to make my own workouts. Yes, as coaches, I do make my own workouts sometimes. But when I'm hitting those phases where I'm like, blah, dude, I go get someone else's program that I trust and actually follow it and stay accountable with it. And it helps me get going again. In business, same thing. I have a couple mentors I can call. Like when I get stuck, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm feeling like I just want to throw my sucker in the dirt and F this. I call those guys and they can keep me held up. You know, everyone needs those buddies. And, I think especially as retired rodeo athletes or guys that don't rodeo anymore, we get caught in this mindset of, well, I'm not competing for this thing, so what do I need a coach for? You know, well, it's a lot of things. For me, the camaraderie is a huge part. Getting to talk to the guy is every day, you know, or every week about what I'm doing and keeping it all up to date is huge. But Paul, go ahead. What were you going to
say? That goes back to what JR was saying earlier. Like he was missing the competition in something. And I think, you know, I've kind of been thinking through this conversation. It's like we are hardwired to compete.
Absolutely.
And I think that rodeo further ingrains that. And then so when we leave rodeo, whether it's taken away from us, like I don't know what the actual statistics are, but I would be willing to bet that 50% of people that rodeo don't choose when that ends for them.
Yes.
And then the other 50 do. When it's gone, if you don't find something else to compete in, you're left empty. Like you don't know what to do because we are so hardwired for it. And I feel like people that don't rodeo, maybe they lose that competition drive a little bit sooner. But you know, it's going to be different for everybody, but we all have this competition drive that we're born with. And then when we rodeo professionally, it is just like, it's who we are and we have to compete in something. Yeah. It's like, it's a drug. I mean, we say it all the time, like rodeo is like a drug, like it's the most addicting thing in the world. And then when it's gone, you've got to, you still have to compete. You still have to fill that gap. Yeah. And you can compete in business. You can compete in another sport. You can compete
that's why
in
we're
golf.
all doing the things we are.
Hunting, like again, it's you against the animal. So like all of these things are all competition driven, and that's like what I think makes rodeo so great is like we're all, or we move in that direction. But what I guess kind of to wrap this up is, or this what I had to say up is, if you don't find that thing, that's where you get the duds, like JR was saying earlier, like those guys that just they don't know what to do anymore because they atrophy it. Yeah, it atrophies. They just lose it, and
that's,
I'm glad JR still has his.
Hell yeah. And that's, again, the perspective thing. He didn't allow himself to get trapped in that this is my only thing. This was it. This was my only desire. This is the only thing I'm going to be. He changed it a bit. Horses were his desire. He's an incredible horseman, has been his entire life, which is, in my eyes, why you were one hell of a bareback rider, man. Like you have to be a horseman to work with wild horses and to spur them and things like that. And my brother, Richie, was the same way. Kid rode bulls forever, or got on bulls forever. Terrible bull rider. Rode horses his entire life. World champion mounted shooter. Put him on his first bareback horse ever. Spurs the shit out of it. It's like, holy smokes. You know, it's a part of it. It's huge. And for anyone listening that's a youth or a young guy wanting to get into bareback riding that doesn't have access maybe to all of the things right now, if you're young, go get access to a horse. Go ride horses. Go get comfortable around the livestock. That's going to take away and add to the confidence and take away from that anxiety of dealing with a 2,000-pound animal on the daily basis that could potentially kill you.
That's a huge point, man, because you're 100% right. There was a lot of horses that were bad to get out on that I had no problem getting out on, and that was because I had timing and feel, and that correlated into my rodeo career. Like I had this weird once you got through the 50 horse phase of blacking out and the craziness and all the things, I rode my first one too. It took 3 until I finally got one that actually bucked me off. And I'm talking, I rode with the 1960s homemade noodle handle rigging my first 12 horses, like there's just this feel of it. And so once you got through that phase of being comfortable in that adrenaline rush, I had the feel for him. Once I got my markouts down, I could feel when I wanted to bring my feet. Like that timing, I never battled that timing thing because I had the feel of a horse. So that's a great point, and that's a great tip too. Like if you don't have access to all the other things, go get access to a horse and take your rigging with you. I can't tell you how many hours I spent with my rigging on a horse with my hand run in, going through the motions on an actual horse. Like I will never downplay a spur board. I will never downplay the tool of a spur board, but there's something different that comes from the horse also. And I spent hours and hours and hours and hours and hours having somebody chase me around and or just kicking it around, sliding up there, marking it out and spurring it a few times, and that, to touch back on what Paul was saying too, I've went through, you talk about that void. If you're not chasing that thing that lights your fire, that competition thing, I haven't studied a whole ton of other people yet, but I've studied myself, and mine was competition. I got to be high level. I got to be shooting for the impossible in whatever it is that I'm doing. But when I didn't have rodeo, I tried to correlate that into my cattle operation. It didn't work. I tried to correlate that into my cattle trade operation. It didn't work. I tried to correlate that into walking. It didn't work. And I got depressed, man. That void that you're talking about, that's what freaking makes us soft. Like you just start making excuses as to why you're not trying to scratch that itch. And I'm not saying it can't come from a hobby. I don't care if it's your hobby that lets you go scratch that itch a little bit. You have got to find that something that you can fan that flame a little bit with, and either it ignites it or it at least scratch the itch, whether it is a golfing hobby or a whatever hobby. That competition thing that we're talking about, if you aren't chasing it, I call it our dreams, desires, and passions. If you're not chasing it, it will freaking lead you into depression. And I've been there. I've been deep, dark, depressed. I've been sad. I've been mad. I've been happy. I've been joyful. I've got to experience some cool things even since the situation. I've been humbled. I've learned a lot of life lessons. But the one thing that I have learned is I don't care what it is, whether it's a sickness, whether it's an injury, whether it's a financial wreck, whether it's being stuck in a 9-to-5, I don't care what it is. You cannot make an excuse as to not go chase your passion. Because if you aren't chasing your passion, you will have that hole and it will make you soft and it leads to depression.
Man, that's it. That is it. And I was in the same boat, dude. I think a lot of guys will resonate with this. There's so many guys that we rodeoed with that got injured and stopped, and they kind of just dropped off the face of the earth, right? Like you just don't hear from them or see them anymore, and they're going through that, and they're not having as much luck being able to change their perspective and find that thing that keeps them competitive. And I think mostly because they don't know that's what they're supposed to be looking for still. They just still are stuck in that, this could have been or should have been deal. And, that's just not how, if you're going to be a winner at life at anything, you've got to have that mentality of going into something as a competitor. And all of us on this screen right now are wired the same way. We all go hard at the same things. Yeah, anything we do, it's all about how can we be the best. We want to be the best coaches we can. You want to be, the best man you can, the best horseman you can, the best dad you can. All of these things we all want to be, and we put everything into all of those things, and that's what keeps us rolling. So, also, I think that surrounding yourself with like-minded men is a really big thing. There's a reason that we all have friends.
Absolutely.
There's a reason that we all communicate with each other on a regular basis. I don't just talk to people regularly just to talk to them. I talk to them because they're my buddy, but they also hold me up. They give me mentorship. They give me accountability. They're there for me. And if you don't have that group, I highly encourage you to start looking around for people, guys that you look up to that maybe you want to be like. People are I find that finding a mentor is easier than most people think. It's some of that intimidation thing, like that guy doesn't want to help me. You'd be surprised if you just asked and took some initiative to reach out, right? So, man, Junior, thank you so much for coming on today, buddy. This was awesome. Do any of you guys have any other questions for him before we roll out? No. I usually ask what the guy's legacy is, but you
just thank you for coming on, JR. Like this conversation has been very valuable for my life too.
You've been an inspiration for much longer than even before the accident. And I have a lot of cool pictures from my riding career, JR, but my favorite one is with you standing on the back of the buck and chute side, one San Angelo, and in the back of the buck and chutes, I'm got my finger pointed to the sky, but on the back of the buck and chutes, you're screaming for me. And you have and that was all I wanted, was to be accepted by my peers, which is a topic for another time. But you've been inspiring and encouraging people way before you even thought, even before the Lord put that in your heart to make that your mission. And man, this has just been so encouraging for me this morning. And so,
well, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. I want to touch back base on the last thing that Doug just said there. And I appreciate that. That's a very humbling compliment that I didn't know how to take for a long time, because I have always been that guy, Logan. And you go ask Richie Champion, you go ask Caleb Bennett, you go ask RC Landingham, you go ask any of those guys that I rodeoed around. None of them would say that they didn't want J.R. Vezain on the back of their buck and chute. Everybody wanted J.R. Vezain on the back of their buck and chute, because I love frickin' spurring grizzly bears, and I love everybody that I'm around frickin' spurring grizzly bears. And it's a gift of mine. It's a spiritual gift of mine. Since the time I was a little kid, I was the kid in the wrestling room that pumped everybody up, and we all wanted to go run 10 more sprints. And it's this drive of me trying myself, honestly, I think is where it comes. I love checking my boundaries and then getting past them constantly. And I love it when other people do that too, getting to their highest level and then going the extra little nugget because they didn't believe they could. And so people used to tell me, I don't know if I could handle that situation if I were put in or I don't know if I could handle the same situation the way that you handle it. And I didn't know how to take it for a long time, because I'd be like, I'm the same guy that you were cheering for 5 years ago. I put my pants on the same way, one leg at a time. It just looks different now. And through the course of it, I do understand it, because I've been high of highs and low of lows. I've been depressed. I've said the suicidal prayer, man. Lord, please take my life away from me, because I think those around me would be better off without me. And here I am 5 years later. I can't deny my faith. I can't tell you that the rock that I lean on isn't the Lord, because it is. It's in those moments that's where I would go. But I don't want to turn this into a gospel podcast, but here I am 5 years later, living the same life that I was before, chasing the same things, and that's high-end goals. And the thing is, we cannot quit. I don't care what it is. Do not quit. I prayed for 3 years to ride the horse. And I think modern day Christianity, we think that you have to be this perfect thing to be a Christian, and you don't. You don't rinse off and then get in the shower. You get in the shower and rinse off. And I think people think, well, once you have a belief or you believe in God, that life is easy. And I've read that book front to back, and I've never saw that that's what was said in there. It says you will face trials, struggles, and tribulations. But if you will continue to lean on Him, He'll get you through them. So it's having that thing in the fire, and that's where I lean. But I accepted my role as an inspirer and an encourager. And I humbly accept that compliment, because it's affirmations that I'm doing the right thing, saying the right things. Because some days I struggle too. I have the doubts, I have the fears, I have the days, the slumps, I have those things. And what Doug said was, it's those like-minded people that continue to pull you out of the trenches. And here's a thing that I've learned as a man. We all just want to pull our, and maybe it's just a cowboy culture, I don't know, but I think it's men in general. We want to pull our boots up by the bootstraps, and we think we can handle life on our own. And this situation for me has taught me that we can't do life on our own. I don't care how freaking tough you think you are, you cannot do life on your own. And it's okay to need help, and it's okay to receive help, and it's okay to ask for help. And you will receive more breakthrough, and you will receive more progress, and you will receive results faster when you will be vulnerable. When you will say, I need a coach, I need help, here's where I am struggling. And that takes some self-reflection. You got to know what you can handle. And I have to call Doug and say, hey man, I'm freaking dealing with some discipline issues here. Like, I need you freaking calling me. And if you see me lagging, I need you freaking helping me out. I need that. Like, you, as men, we have to be vulnerable, and it's okay to be vulnerable. You got to get that group. I don't care if it's one other person or if it's a group of 4 or 5, whatever it is, you got to get that group of guys that you can open up to and be honest with, and receive the help. And when you do, you'll reach results so much faster.
Yeah. That's huge, man. That is huge. Junior, thanks so much, buddy. We're gonna wrap this up, and guys, thank you for listening. If you have any questions, please shoot us a message. Leave us a review, please, on any listening platform that you're on. That is the one thing that helps us with our ratings. Guys, until next time, we'll catch you later.